Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and this is Dear Profiler Pat, where I give advice, I profile life, maybe your life. We'll see. Today's question is: my adult children don't pay much attention to me. Can I fix that? Okay. This is a interesting question and has a lot of situations and answers. So before I get started, if you're new to the channel, please do subscribe, like the video, and check my playlists on the different areas of advice that I give. Okay, now let's think about this. My adult kids don't pay much attention to me. Well, first of all, when you reach a certain age and the kids grow up, welcome to most of our lives. I want to point out first, this can be a cultural issue. In some countries, the adult children are much closer to the parents. They may even live with their parents. There's a very funny a movie I love called Outsourced, and this American fellow has arrived in India to work, and he's met by an Indian man who is now just chatting with him, and he says, they're talking about where he lives in San Francisco, and he says that he lives, lives in San Francisco, and his parents live a couple hundred miles away. And the Indian guy goes, "What? You don't live with your parents?" And he's like, "Oh, heck no!" And the Indian guy is like shocked because he's like, "Well, how can you live so far away from them? They're your parents." But I'm in the U.S. I don't know where you live in the world, but in the U.S., most kids grow up and leave home and don't live with their parents. Some do stay in the area. I am very fortunate that my daughter, I live right next door to my daughter and her husband and my granddaughter. My two sons actually live in town as well. Got lucky that way. But some people have their children on the other side of the country and maybe even in another country. So they have much more distance. But even if they live close, do they pay that much attention to you? Okay, so here's a situation. As we're raising our children, they are our lives. We spend 24 hours a day with those little creatures, from the time they're babies till the time they are teenagers and eventually go to college and leave home. We're with them all the time. They're our world, and we are their world too. They look to us all the time for everything. They do pay attention to us. And then they leave home. They go on about their own lives and they forget about us, except when they need us. And that can be that painful empty nest syndrome because that whole world you had is suddenly kind of vanished. And you still want your kids near you, but they're not near you. Even if they live in town, they're not that near you. They're doing their own thing. And when I look back on my life, did I think about my parents that much once I left home? No, I was like, oh, bye, going to California. Went to the other side of the country. And did I call them every day to see how they were doing, to find out what they were doing? Like, was I interested in their daily lives? Not really. I was living my little life. And I know that sometimes they called me and said, "We're wondering if you're dead. We haven't heard from you." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I'm fine. How are you?" And then sometimes you make the obligatory call, like, "Oh, I haven't called my parents for a while. I better call them." But a lot of times when you're a young person in your 20s and 30s, you're busy with your own life, you kind of don't need your parents, so you kind of don't pay attention to them. And that leaves the parent feeling like, well, all those years I worked so hard and now you're just gone. So, and maybe you don't even care about me that much. You don't care if my health is okay. You don't care if I'm having a good time. You're not interested in anything I'm doing. And it's difficult. It really is difficult. But there's that dynamic between parents and children where the parent is supposed to be interested in everything their child achieves. It's like, oh, you're taking up a new hobby. How wonderful. Oh, you got a job promotion. How wonderful. Oh, it's always, oh, you. And then the kid doesn't even care, doesn't ask and say, well, what are you doing? Do you have a new hobby? They don't even think to ask. They just talk about themselves. And, and if you push something in, say, oh, by the way, I'm doing that, they go, oh, really? Yeah. Now, mind you, this is not all kids, but I'm exaggerating a wee bit, but you get what I'm saying. Are there a few kids who are super, super close to their parents, like really super close? Yes, there are. I have heard of mothers and daughters who say, we're like sisters. We do everything together. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it certainly the parent enjoys it for sure, because that child hasn't left their life too much. You know, they're always there, calling them every day, getting together, taking cruises with them. I mean, sometimes there are relationships like that. Some sons and fathers, same thing. They're always getting together to do stuff. And working in the woodwork, like doing carpentry together, or going hunting together, or whatever the heck they're doing. You know, it's true. But for a lot of parents, their kids go off and live their own lives. And then you feel left out. And so what do you do when your kid doesn't pay that much attention to you? And can you fix it? Well, it's a tricky one. First, I'm going to start with this. First, you have to understand whether your kid likes you. And that could be a problem. Sometimes when kids grow up, you might have a kid. It just isn't that into you, you know? And their personalities clash. They just, I don't know, they don't like you for some reason enough to want to pay attention to you very often. It's sad, but that can happen. Now, so if that's the truth, you might have to look at yourself and say, why is the kid not really wanting to be around me? And that could be that could be a very deep issue. But let's say you're okay. Basically, you're okay together. You get along fine, and they don't dislike you and you don't dislike them. The next thing would be is, do you have anything in common? Sometimes the problem is we just have nothing to talk about. We don't have any connection. Right now, I live next to my daughter, and I live next to my granddaughter. So she needs me to pick up my granddaughter from school. Mom, can you watch her this afternoon? Can you take her to horseback riding lessons? You know, so yes, we have our granddaughter in common. One of my sons also has a YouTube channel, and that gives us something to talk about. So we have that. We go back and forth about certain things on the YouTube channel. We also have interest in certain politics together. So he'll talk to me, like we'll get on the phone, and he'll talk to me for 3 hours about that. My other son, I don't have as much in common with him. And so therefore, we don't connect as often, because what are we going to connect about when, you know, we don't have the same hobbies, we don't have, it's difficult. So he shows up at family occasions and says, hi, Mom, gives me big hugs and tells me he loves me. And once in a while he'll call and say, Ma, I've got to ask you a question about, he has some kind of little life issue, maybe a girlfriend or something, and he wants my opinion because he respects my opinion. He'll call me for that. He'll call me Mother's Day. He'll come with flowers. I have, birthdays. I go out to lunch and stuff like that. So we do get together, but not as much as my other son. And it's not because I love one more than the other. It's just I have more in common right at the moment. And I want to remember this, at the moment, because that can change. Your child can pick up some activity. You could pick up some activity that connects the two of you all of a sudden. Maybe that both of you start getting into cooking, and then you want to share recipes. Or maybe it's a business, you suddenly, get in business together, and then you see them all the time. So it could be that kind of connection that pops up sometime in the future. And that's really cool when that happens. And you'll see the dynamic change when that happens. Now, can you make it happen? Can you make more of a connection? Decide you're going to be interested in what they're interested in. You can, if it's natural enough. That would make some difference. I can't say it would work necessarily, but that would make a difference if you can find a way that is going to connect the two of you, then find that way. That would be very useful. And then you might say, hey, now we're seeing each other more often. Some people try to connect on vacations, like pay for the kids' vacation. Now, for me, my son and I have one of my sons and I we have that similar interest in travel too. So we connect through vacations sometimes. He called me from India when he was there, and he said, "Ma, I know you love India," and he was going to school there at the college. And he said, "I know you love India, so I thought you might like. I'm on my summer vacation. I thought you'd like to join me and see some of India." And I said, "What? You don't have any money?" He's like, "Well, yeah." So if the kids need money, you'll see them more often. So I went to India, and we had a fabulous time traveling all over India, and we get along well in traveling. He called me up again during COVID, and he wanted to go. He was on a date, kind of took a car trip, went down to Florida, and he said, "Why don't you meet me in Miami, and we'll do the Keys?" Again, well, Miami is expensive. If the mom comes down to Miami, she'll pay for the hotel, and then we'll go, which I did. I paid for the hotel and the Keys, and we again had a great time. And then he called me the third time to go to he was in the West Coast staying with his dad, and I flew out to San Jose, and we took a trip to Oregon and through Napa country. First Napa and did the wine thing, and then Oregon, and then Washington and Seattle. And he paid for the car, yay! And I paid for Napa and some of the meals, and then he paid for a Seattle's Mariner game when we were there, and we had a great time. We travel well together. I also travel well with my daughter, so we have been to China together. We've been to we did. I did a cruise ship speaking engagement, Mediterranean. She went with me for that. We went to Puerto Rico together, and we usually do a mother-daughter, granddaughter trip every year. And so far, our last trip was New York City. Had a great time. So, and my other son, we just don't seem to have that travel interest together. So bummer. So I don't see him as much, and he doesn't pay as much attention to me as the other two, just because I have more things happening with the other two. So can you do things like set up vacations so you have that special time with him? Sure, especially if you pay for it. But I will warn you about something. Sometimes people pick a vacation where they think they pick something that their kids don't even really like. For example, if you go, let's say you go to Hawaii, and you decide you're going to get rent this house. It's going to be back in some isolated spot, and it's really cool. It has a pool, and your kids are like, "I'm bored out of my mind. I don't really enjoy going there because I'm not having any fun." So then they get annoyed with you. So you get one in Honolulu, and now the kids can have a great time because they can go out to bars and party and go swimming and do all these cool things, and then they ignore you because they're too busy. But if that's true, if you have to figure out how can we connect under those circumstances, what can we do together? Like, let's say you pick activities they're going to like, and you join them in those activities, and maybe pay for them again. Kids love your money, and so pay. You take them on something like we're going to go snorkeling. And I'm paying for whatever. We're going to go out on this boat. I'm going to rent a boat, and they want to go out on the boat and drink champagne and whatever. Have a little picnic on the boat and whatever. And you're paying for the boat. They'll go. So picking things that they really like, obviously, will bring you together and have them pay more attention to you than if you pick something they could really aren't interested in, or you just plop yourself someplace and then they just disappear on you. Some people, by the way, try to do this with buying a house in a location where they think they're going to inspire their children to come to. Like, I live in Maryland, and if you get a house, like a condo in Ocean City, which my daughter did, by the way, in Ocean City, if I had gotten that condo and it was available for my kids to come, and I could say, well, I'm going to, let's all go, let's say I even lived there. I live at the beach, and, in the summertime, they like to come to the condo because it's a free place to stay in Ocean City. So then I have them around me. That works. Of course, the rest of the year, they're not going to come because it's cold. So I don't know, maybe you have to have two homes and you stay there for the summer. Otherwise, they just want to borrow it when you're not there and you won't see them. Some people, they'll pick someplace really cool. Like I'm going to get a beautiful house on the Riviera Maya in Mexico. That's great, except for the fact that your children don't have time to fly to Mexico, especially if they got kids. It's not like they're going to pick up very often and go to Mexico to be with you. That's unlikely. Maybe they'll get there once a year, especially if you pay for it. And, they'll get there once a year for their vacation. Other than that, you're not going to see them because they're not going to whip down there every weekend. It's too far away and they've got things to do, and it's too expensive, and they got kids. Everybody's got activities. So you have to consider each of these things and will they even work? Another thing would be, how do you communicate? These days, kids don't like to call very much unless they really need to. They use texting a lot, and I've seen too many seniors say, "Oh, I don't text." I'm like, oh, please text. Please text. Why? First of all, texting is great because it's a very useful tool. How do you use texting? You don't use texting for a big conversation. That's not how it's used. If you want to say something more, you need a whole couple paragraphs to give some information, you email. Or you can phone, but you don't use texting for that. What you do is use texting for quick back and forth things. And so that works out really nice because you can send something to them and say, oh, look, we're going to rent a boat this weekend. You want to go? And see what they say. Or my daughter, a lot of times, will send me pictures of my granddaughter doing something. So that way, we have a lot of back and forth. We send jokes back and forth, things like that. And so because she doesn't have to pick up the phone and say, "Hi, Ma, how are you doing?" Blah, 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 blah. She can just send me something that she thinks I would enjoy. And it's quick. And I can respond quickly. And so I have this whole list. If I go through my messages from her that she texted me, I have tons of pictures and jokes and little stuff. So I feel much more connected to her because we can have this ongoing thing rather than every week she'll try to make an obligatory phone call to ask me how I'm doing. So I think texting is extremely, extremely important. Another thing that some people like and some people don't is Facebook. I like Facebook because they may not be paying attention to me that much, but if I post cool things on Facebook, they may see it. They may see it come in and say, "Oh, Ma, I didn't know you went to such and such this weekend." "Oh, Ma, I put up some of my paintings, pastel paintings on Facebook, and I've had my kids say, 'I saw your painting on Facebook. It's really cool. I really like that one.'" And then I can look at their Facebook page and see what they're doing. It's like, "Oh, look, you went to the beach without me." But I get that connection feel because I can see what they're doing as opposed to having this blank where I don't have any clue what's going on with them. And I'm like, so it's like an open diary, and it does make you feel more connected to the person. So I love Facebook for friends and for family, and even, and I have my own Facebook pages, and I have people who I've never even met who comment on my Facebook pages, and it helps me connect with those people. So I think that's a good thing to be able to do. But, I'm trying to think of there other things. Oh, cooking. Here's one I suffer from. My mother-in-law had all her adult children always visiting her. Every weekend there was she had the family dinner, and she was Jamaican. So great food. And my sister-in-law was a fabulous cook. So she lived with Mom. So everybody would go there and have this nice get-together. And everybody wanted to go there, not just for the food, but also for the family. And she was there, so she got to see all her adult children at least once a week, all coming to her house for this gathering. Well, I don't think my kids like my cooking. A lot of times I make vegetarian stuff, and even when I don't, they're just not that inspired. So to get my kids all over for dinner doesn't really work very well. I've tried, and big failure. It sucks. But if you're a good cook and you can inspire your children to come over to your house because you cook well, especially if you're married. Now, my mother-in-law had been separated from her husband for years, so she was there alone. But but she had her one daughter there. Yeah, one daughter. And it's still, she made that a place to go. And some people who have actually still a couple, they want to go because they'll see mom and dad and get together. So if you can arrange those kind of things, that really works really well. If the kids like your cooking and want to come over for that, again, free meal. See, money does make a difference. But finding the things, you have to actually examine what your children like, what would make them connect to you, because a lot of times it is just simply true that they're just not as interested in your daily life and all the things you do. They're not kids are, it's funny, just they're not that thrilled about it. They want you to be thrilled about their daily lives, and that's the way it is. Sometimes we have to accept certain realities and then work with what we can work with. And so examine those things. Look at the ways you can connect to your children or get them to connect to you, and how well you can bribe them. Anyway, those are my thoughts on that. Put any ideas you have on how to get your kids to pay attention to you, put them in the comments below, and I think everyone will appreciate it. Anyway, thank you for being here. Again, if you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe and check those playlists. I'll see you next time. Oh, and I forgot to mention, if you want me to answer a question, write to profilerpatbrown@gmail.com and put in the subject line, Dear Profiler Pat. Okay? See you next time.